Right, we should be live. Let me know if you can hear me. If I'm too loud. It is a very hot day in the UK today, so I've got a fan on. Hopefully there's not too much background noise. Let me know if you can hear me. Hey Alex. Hey Sebastian. How are we doing? The fan is audible in the background, but not that bad. Let me move the fan. The fan is very loud. Right, let's turn it off. Let's turn it off for a bit. See how hot I get. Hey Kai from Japan. Thank you for coming along. Right, we are live. Let's tweet that out. Hey Sebastian. What time is it in Japan? Yeah, good question. So I'm in the UK. It's currently 7 PM Sunday. Japan's probably like what, +5, +6 hours on me. Wait for a few more people to turn up maybe. OBS seems to be quite happy. Yeah, it's too hot. I'm going to have to put this fan back on. Let me move the fan around a little bit. Let's see. Maybe if I... Can I add... No, I don't want to mess around with the audio settings too much while I'm live. Just leave that as is. Cool. Hopefully the fan's not too loud. I will be talking most of the time, so I should be able to talk over the fan. Right, we are. Hey Bernard. It's really not that loud. Cool, sweet. Thank you, Alex. Cool. So I've been away. I've been away on holiday for a week. Absolutely no laptop, no programming for a week. I am a little bit rusty. But while I was away, I was doing some reading. It's 3 AM. I have to be at the high school in 5 hours because I'm 17 years old. You best go to sleep. 3 AM. Ouch. What is that? That is 8 hours ahead of me. +8. Wow. Yeah, so I was away for a week. When you're not programming every day, you tend to have like the best ideas pop into your head. So during the day, I work for an insurance company. And as you can expect, there's lots of sort of reports and exports that we have to do. Some of those we just run like SQL in Table Plus against a read-only database. Others we have like rerunnable exports that you can download from like an admin panel. But those exports typically look something like this. I'll just do this in the Markdown. So we have like a class, I don't know, like my orders export. And for each of those exports, we kind of have to do a query. So we might return my orders export, yeah. So we return like an orders query. We do some wheres, we do some order bys, groups, all sorts. And then that gets paginated in the background. Well, actually the way it works in our production system is we chunk, we use batch jobs, Laravel's batch jobs, and each job in the batch is responsible for generating a single chunk of an export. Some of our exports might have like 50,000 rows, and running those in like a single job with no timeout is really slow. So we batch those into chunks, and then each chunk generates its own CSV. And at the very end, we concatenate all of those CSVs back together. I think when we did that, we had one export that could take like 45 minutes to run. And then once we put it into the batches, it took like 5 or 6 minutes. So huge improvement. I spent a good amount of time sort of battle testing that and making it rugged. But those exports sort of look like this. So we have a query, and then we have like a row function which receives the model and returns an array. And now that array is just a key value array. So you might have, I don't know, like ID, order, ID, price, number, format, order, price, to, stuff like that. Maybe we prefix it with a currency symbol, stuff like this. I absolutely hate writing these exports because, one, it feels tedious because you're maintaining a query and a sort of mapper function that maps the model to a row. It can get kind of tedious. Like you need to add a column, so you have to modify the query perhaps to make sure you're selecting that column. You then have to add the row in. There's sort of edge cases. They can get really big. Hey Ollie, how's it going? Alex. But I like the style of it. Do you have a Twitter account? For getting followers for free. How you doing, Ollie? Yeah, so you have a query, you have a row method. It can get really messy, especially on huge exports where you might have like 40 columns. So this might never actually be usable. I kind of had a bit of an idea to write my own query language, if you like. Not necessarily a language that would like compile down to SQL. Yes, we use Laravel. Yep. Laravel is our main framework. We've been using Laravel for 5 years, 6 years. So I had an idea to write a query language, and this is something I've thought of before, but I kind of thought about the syntax a little bit more. Query lang like SQL or Eloquent, a mixture of the two. So my idea is to have a language that is sort of as simple and readable as SQL, but has some of the niceties of Eloquent at the same time. The language itself will just compile down to an Eloquent query. That way you can still sort of write the base query and then do the modifications like pagination or getting a lazy cursor. So I think I'll focus mainly today on the syntax and the parsing stage. So actually converting the query that we write into a sequence of tokens into some sort of abstract syntax tree. We'll start really simple. I'll kind of show you my ideas. It's really hot. I think it's so RQL generate will return a query builder instance. Yeah, so the function signature might look something like public function generate string query and return a builder like this. Obviously this would be an Eloquent builder, so that would kind of be the function signature. We'd probably also have like an array of bindings in here, so you can do interpolation and stuff. The general process though would be one, tokenize the query, to pass the query into an abstract syntax tree, 3, compile the query, or compile the AST into an eloquent query, and then 4, return the builder object. So I think that will be the general steps that we go through. I'm going to write the tokenizer from scratch. I'm going to write the parser from scratch. The compiler obviously will be from scratch. Yeah, I mean, let's see how we go. I've got my cherry coke. See if I can turn my fan a little bit so it's actually blowing on me. Cool. Yeah, let's make a start. So I've got a very bare bones package here. This is using the Sparsy package skeleton. Facades we will need. Commands we won't need. But really we can just start in here. I will also make a scratch PHP file. Vendor, auto load. This is how I would typically sort of experiment with a package like this. Documentation driven development. That is kind of the idea, yeah. Get an idea for the API. So really we want to go from something like this into a much more succinct sort of query language. You only download the eloquent package. I'm not sure what you mean, Sebastian. So we've got our RQL class. We don't want to make that final. While I'm here, I will make this macroable, and we will also need an Illuminate database. We'll support all versions of Laravel 9. Cool. So we're going to have that single function called generate, which will take in a query and a builder will be returned. Excuse me. Yeah. So for now, let's just DD this query. And let's create a new RQL. Salad? Salud? I'm not sure what you're trying to tell me, to be completely honest. It means bless you. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Pollen count is very high in the UK as well, so hay fever is, or allergies, I don't know what people call it outside of the UK. Cool. So let's think of what this query language needs to look like. So I think most queries, essentially all eloquent queries, start out with a base model. Oh, Spanish, okay. Is it like salut, like French? Salut? Yeah, all eloquent queries start out with some sort of base model. So in the case of our orders export, it would have been an order class. So I'm thinking the query language needs to know what model to use as the base. So we could have something like using order, and this would just be a class name. That seems okay. So using order. Let's semicolons or no semicolons? Semicolons kind of makes parsing easier because you have a clear end to a statement or a block or an expression. Ryan query, yeah, I thought of it as reporting query language because I'm trying to use this to replace reports, exports, but Ryan's query language works as well, yeah. Yeah, so I think we'll go with a using statement, which will be sort of like the base for the query. And then use semicolons be on the same side of the force. Saw a GitHub repo noob. What is it all about? I think you're probably thinking of no-op. No-op. It's literally just a function that does nothing. It's no operation. Yeah, I'm kind of experimenting with a command line tool written in Rust that is Composer compatible. So it does the same thing as Composer. Composer's quick, but I'm just curious how fast something can be if it's written in Rust. And we sort of get like Rust type safety and threading and stuff like that. Sort of inspired by the whole Bun.js thing. Bun is like insanely quick compared to NPM. So I was like, maybe I can write something in Rust that does the same thing. So I built this package with like no dependencies, a simple file autoloader, because I was just testing parsing the packagist API response, and I needed a package that I knew would always be there and had a certain structure. So that's why this package exists. It literally says don't bother looking at this, so don't bother looking at it. You don't say I tried something similar to Go. Yeah, I saw your tweet, I think. Yesterday, I think it was yesterday. Maybe I'll do a stream on that at some point as well. I've not made a lot of progress right now. It at the minute it just does some API calls, resolves no dependencies, so it's only really useful for installing dependency-free packages, and it generates a very basic autoloader in the same style as Composer. It's completely Composer compatible. Yeah. So using order. If we go back to my Scratch document, what I want to do is sort of have a way of mapping the query columns directly to some sort of array like this. So, perhaps actually maybe this doesn't want to return a builder. Maybe we actually want something like a compile method which returns a builder, and then compile returns a builder, and then we have like toArray, which also takes the same query, returns an array, and then something like offset. No, I think we'll leave this for now. So let's rename this to compile. I prefer compile than generate because that's actually what it's doing. It's compiling. So we'll do this. Compile. So using order, then we want a way of selecting columns. So my original idea was something like this. We said we're going to use semicolons. So you have this sort of select block. I wonder if curly braces are smarter because then it's actually like a block. Yeah, let's go with that. So you have a select block, which is like a select statement or clause in an SQL query. And then in here you would specify the column names. So you might have something like order.id, order.id, order. What do we say? Price, was it? And this would be like your simple report. Node love heart. I don't use Node. Well, obviously I use Node for like writing scripts and stuff, but I don't use Node on the back end. Is it smart if like GraphQL? What do you mean, Ali? Do you mean does it do smart stuff like GraphQL? So we have a select block, we have order ID, order price, and I think the idea is that this would kind of get translated to order query, select ID, price, get. Well, it would just be translated to that. We're explicitly saying select the ID, select the price. Since we're using order as a base, this like prefix is kind of implicit, right? When you're writing SQL, you don't necessarily have to say, you can do stuff like select all from orders, or select ID price from orders. It's implicit that it's coming from orders, and there's no conflict in table names. So perhaps up here we can do it like this: select ID price. Same GraphQL syntax on compile, maybe. I'm still not sure what the question is. Maybe give me an example. Yeah, so we could do select ID price, or I mean in Swift, if you have an enum in Swift, I don't know, like red, green, if something is type hinted as the enum, so like color, then if you were to access, if you were trying to assign something to color, you can shorthand it, so you can say .red, and because the language knows you're assigning to assigning a value of type color, it will sort of fill the prefix in here for you. So .red is the same as doing color.red. Swift knows that it's going to be an instance of color, so you can leave out the object type or the enum type or the class type and just access the dot property. That might look nice. So you do like dot price. It seems interesting. Let's just go with this for now. Let's do ID and price. Yeah. Okay. So that's our simple example. You know, we've got a using statement and a select block, which in this case might be nicer to write on a single line like this. I guess you could completely forego the using statement as well and do like select order .id order price. It can do some magical stuff. But let's try and tokenize this. So we're gonna create a parser namespace. This is gonna be PHP 8.1. So we'll have a token class. Nope, not app. It'll be parser. Final class token, and we'll have 2 arguments. So we'll also have a token type enum. This is kind of perfect use case for enums. So enum token type, and the tokens we have using, which is a keyword. We have order, which is an identifier, We have a semicolon, select, which is a keyword, a left brace and a right brace, a comma, and then ID and price, which are both identifiers as well. So case using, case select, case identifier, semicolon, and comma, left brace, and a right brace. They are all of our tokens. So a token object will accept a public read-only token type, and a public read-only string with the literal value. And we can make this nullable, I think. Because we know what the literal value of a keyword is. Like we know using is going to be using. So perhaps we leave those out. Or we just make it required. It's probably a little bit smarter. That way we can reconstruct queries just by sort of looping over the tokens. Yeah, I like that. So we also need a lexer, and a lexer is going to walk over each character and build up that abstract syntax tree. So we'll have a lexer. Instead of making this class final, we'll actually just do this, implement stringable, and then toString will just return the literal value. We'll also make the constructor final here, and we'll have a protected string query. I like to have mine formatted like this. So we've got our query coming into our lexer. So in our QL, we can instantiate a new lexer and pass through the query. And for now, let's just add a tokenize method which returns a collection. No, we'll return an array. So tokens, we'll store that in a property. Protected array tokens. We'll get all of the characters from the query, so we can use string split. Pass in this query, and if we just dd out our characters, let's get rid of this and just execute our scratch file. Yep. So these are all of our tokens here. We have white space, which we can get rid of. New lines, which are just irrelevant really. White space, braces, semicolons. So we need to loop through all of our characters. So let's do this the old school way. Count characters. So for each character is going to equal characters I. And we can fix that type error just by returning tokens. Let's do the simple ones. Let's do a match expression on character. We'll say if it's a semicolon. No, that's not what we want to do. We want to append to our tokens. So if it's a semicolon, we'll return a new token where the token type is semicolon. Any specific reason not to use a for each loop, and y++ $i instead of I++. I've been doing a bit of C++, so I think the ++ and C actually, I think historically ++i is faster than I++ in those languages. And where I've been doing a little bit of C and C++, that's sort of just in my head. We could use a for each loop. I think for like raw performance, I wonder if there's a difference. Should we benchmark it? 3v... What's the bloody website called? But it behaves differently than I++ in C, yes. Yeah. It behaves differently, like I++ and ++i are just different in general. One increments before returning the value, one returns the value and then increments. What is it, 3VL, 4L? Yeah, there we go. Let's I mean, I'm just curious. I want to see for each eyes as I. Let's just echo I like that. Let's do it in PHP 8.1. So that took 18 milliseconds. I really don't know how to use this tool properly. I'm sure there's a way of doing like 1 to 100,000 for I = 0, I less than count I's, I++. Oh, I'm running that in all versions. Let's run it in PHP 8.1. 16 milliseconds, 14 milliseconds. There's no difference on that very rudimentary test case. Yeah, maybe using a no-up is a good option. Just raw looping performance. That's fine. We'll stick with the old school for loop. Actually, the reason, thinking about it now, the reason I want to use a for loop here is because I know that in some cases I will want to skip a bunch of characters. Whereas with a for each loop, I'll have to like move the array pointer using like next. But really, I just want to increment I by an arbitrary number of characters. Think of like an identifier that can have as many characters as it needs. With a for each loop, you'd have to move that internal array pointer, whereas with this, I can just increment I by a certain number. So we have that. We have a left brace. That is a left brace. We have a right brace. As well. We have a comma. Do we have anything else? Semicolon. Brace, comma, semicolon. Right, so there are basic tokens. If we run this now, unhandled match case, Yes. So I'm to do never throw new exception string message unimplemented message and in autoload dev that should be in a namespace. We will autoload that and import exception default to do match character import use function to do. Cool. Yeah, okay, that seems fine. Any questions so far? So right now we're just matching some simple tokens like semicolon, left brace, right brace, and comma. Next, we will match. PHP's match isn't very powerful, is it? Okay, let's skip this. Let's do simple character, which optionally returns a token type. And then we can copy this. And instead of returning new token, we will do this and default to null. Get rid of this. What is that to do function is in the PHP standard library? No. It's literally just a function that throws an exception with a message. But as somebody who spends a good amount of time in the Rust world these days, I'm quite used to having like to do unimplemented, unreachable functions like that. So if I'm developing something, I like to have them so that they're clear. I know the difference between something that's actually throwing an exception and something that's like not implemented yet. So I've refactored this here. So instead of having a match, because I can't take Rust, for example, in a match statement you can do ranges between characters. So you can say match character and say, is it between A and Z? And if it's a character in that range, you can then execute an expression. In PHP, you can't really do that without doing like match true and then doing an in array as the expression. So instead, we'll do if this is a simple character, we'll append a new token with the the type provided by the function and the character. Hey David, the Maldives, very nice. Very, very nice. Yeah, so if it's a simple character, we'll append the token, otherwise it will just skip it. And we've got a semicolon, we've got a left brace, we've got a comma, a right brace, and another semicolon which has been truncated for some reason. Very good. Let's move on to if it is an alphabetic character, then we want to create like a buffer. Can you show us how to use repeater feature and how to make custom pages? It should all be in the docs. So if you just go on here, Command K or Control K to open up the search, type in repeater, and you've got the docs here. Custom pages, Command K, type in custom pages, and you've got everything you need here. Custom pages are very simple. Give that a go. This is a PHP library live stream, so I won't touch too much on Filament. Yeah, so if it's an alphabetic character, it means it's either going to be an identifier or a keyword. So let's just start by sort of building up the actual characters itself. Maybe we want to do if it's white space, then just continue. We can ignore all the white space. If it's this, if not is set, characters I+1. So if the next character, which is I+1, that will default to null. So if it's not set, or it's not an alphabetic character, then we want to say this tokens equals new token, token type identifier, and send through the buffer, and just continue on to the next iteration. Otherwise, we can say, no, I'm doing this completely wrong. While true, right? And then we do this inside of the while loop. So we'll say while true, we can break out of that while loop. Yeah. While true, get the next character, default to null. If it's not set, or it's not an alphabetic character, then we're gonna just assign it early. We can do that there. We'll just break. Hello from Trinidad and Tobago. That is very nice. Halim, how you doing? So if it's not set, or it's not an alphabetic character, we can just break. We don't care about it anymore. Otherwise, we will increment I and append the next character onto the buffer. So let's see if we reach this point. Yep, there we go. So we've got the using keyword down here. And the reason we hit that point is because, where are we? So we encountered a white space character there. So we broke out of the loop, appended the token, or would have appended the token. So let's have a look now what we get. So we have using order semicolon, select left brace, ID, comma, price, right brace, semicolon. The world's simplest tokenizer. Now, something we've sort of missed here is that we're always pushing an identifier, and really we want to check if the string that we've built up here, buffer, we want to see if that is actually a keyword. So we'll say match buffer. The default will be an identifier. If we get using, then we know that we have a token type for that. So it'll be using. If it's select, then we know we have one of those. And now we get using as the token type and select as the token type. Nice. But it may happen that a property has a number in it, may it not? Yes, you are completely correct. So if it's SQL column names have to start with an alphabetic character, right? So in SQL you can't have a column called 1, like the number 1. It would have to be like A1 or something like that. So I think we can do alnum, and that will still work. I'm actually going to break this up into 2 if statements. So if it's not set, we do that. You can also have underscores in column names. So if it's not equal to an underscore, break. You know, these are all sort of edge cases that would come up. That has broken something. That needs to be an and. So if it's not an alphanumeric character and it's not an underscore, break. I think that should cover the most basic cases for now. So we've got a very simple tokenizer. I mean, that's all we need for now to sort of compile that very simple query. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Bernard says, what is the best website to practice or prepare for PHP code interview? You can probably Google it, to be completely honest. PHP interview practice. 21 essential, PHP online test. There's all sorts. PHP interview exercises, that might be good. Quite a few stars. Yeah, some simple stuff on here like fizzbuzz. Probably reversing a string. I know, reversing a number. Fibonacci. What else? Queues, stacks, linked list, binary search. Yeah, I'm sure you can find some interesting stuff on GitHub. All right, let's commit this. Let's do basic Alexa implementation. Cool. Right, so we've got tokens, we've got Alexa, now we need a parser. So let's create the parser class. and or. Did I change it back? I did. There we go. And let's git reset source parser. Very dirty commit techniques here. Let's just rewrite that commit. Cool, so we've got a parser and construct. Our parser is going to have a protected array of tokens, and it will also have a parse function which will return an AST object. I guess an AST is not really the right term, because hey Devcast, no worry Bernard. Hopefully you find something useful. An AST is an actual tree of like nodes in a parsed structure, but really our query language is going to have sort of very defined concepts. It's going to have a using statement. It's going to have a select block. It's going to have other constructs. So an AST probably isn't the right terminology. We probably want something like what's a good name for this class? It's not an AST, it's not a document. Query. We could just call it a query. Yeah, let's call it a query. So that will be in the parser namespace still. We'll worry about what that returns in a second. We'll make this happy. And over in RQL, we can get our tokens now by calling tokenize. We can create a new parser as well and pass in those tokens. And for now, let's just DD the result of parser pass. So right now, this is going to be an empty query object, which is fine. That's exactly what we're expecting. So the job of our parser now is to loop through all of those tokens and make expectations against what tokens go where. And depending on where those tokens are, we'll create different structures. So I suppose the first one we can add in query is going to be we'll have a protected let's think about this. Protected string for now. A nullable string. So we'll store the using just as a string. Right now we're only going to support one class name or one identifier there. So for I equals 0, I less than count this tokens I plus plus. We'll say token equals this tokens I. If token type is using, we need a function that sort of makes like an expectation. So expect token type and we'll place the counter up here. This feels really nasty, but let's go with that. So for this I equals 0, this I less than this I plus plus, this I. Let's also make a current function which optionally returns a token. Return this tokens, this I null. So token equals this current now. If the token type is using, that means we've started off a using statement. We need to make an expectation that there is an identifier following that. So if, let's also make a peak. So peak will look at the next token along, but it won't increment the token counter. So this token's this I plus 1. So if this peak type is not equal to type, we'll return a boolean, and there's no need for an if statement here. We can just return the value here. So if they match, the expectation passes. So if not this expect, we expect an identifier. We'll just throw an exception for now and say expected identifier after using in using statement. Otherwise, we will do function next. This is sort of like unsafe code, because what we're actually going to do is return this tokens, this I plus plus this I. This could technically fail. If I is greater than the count of tokens, it will fail, but we'll always use this after an expectation. So we'll know a token exists because the expectation passes. So we'll say identifier is this next. And then we can just do query set using identifier literal. There we go. So we have a query and the order is set on the using. And then we also need to do, we also need to expect a semicolon. So I will create a function for that, which returns void. If not this, expects token type semicolon, throw new exception, expected semicolon. This semicolon. So for each of our tokens, get the current token. If the token type is using, then we expect an identifier to follow it. If there's no identifier, then we just throw an exception. We get the identifier. We set the identifier literal onto the query, and then we expect a semicolon. And that seems to work. Not bad. So if token type is a select, then we expect a left brace, that's also going to be quite common. So let's just do protected function left brace. This is prototype code. Like this stuff's not going to stay around. There'll be like prettier errors, maybe with like line numbers and stuff. We'll also do it for right brace, right brace, right brace. Here, yeah, so if it's a select, then we're going to expect a left brace. And then while this peak and this peak, actually no, we can do it like this. While it's not a right brace, do something, then expect a right brace and a semicolon. So if we open these up side by side, so we'll hit our select up here, and then we'll get to our left brace, and we'll say while the next token isn't a right brace, do something. So that's where we'll handle all of this. And then we'll get to a right brace, so we'll break out of this loop, we'll expect the right brace, and then we'll expect the semicolon. Pretty simple. And the other thing as well, if there's no token here, then this loop will never run, and it will just expect a right brace anyway. So if that's like left empty, the right brace expectation will fail. So we're pretty safe to just consume the next token. If the next token is a comma, we'll just skip it and just continue the loop. Or continue the while loop. We'll make something like this valid. It will just skip all of these commas. That's perfectly fine for simplicity's sake. So if it's a comma, we skip. If it is an identifier, then we need to start storing these selects somewhere. So this will be an array of selects. And again, for now, we'll keep this very simple and just store an array of strings. So add select, string select, this selects equals select, and return this. Query add select next literal. Expected semicolon on line 73. 73, yeah, the stack trace though, 48. This current is an identifier. Okay, let's just do a little bit of debugging here. So left brace. What is next? Next is a left brace. Oh, of course, we're not consuming these left braces, so we can do that safely. Semicolon. Yeah, so what was happening, it was correctly catching the left brace, which is expected, but it wasn't skipping the left brace. We're calling this, we're going to say we expect a left brace. If it does exist, just skip over it. So then in here, this should be what is going on? This I++, this I. Sorry, I'm flying around here. Let's close this. So what's the current one there? It's a select. Oh, of course, we don't skip over it. Expected left brace, which it is. If not this expect token type left brace, throw no exception expected left brace, and then we call this next, which increments I, and then returns the next token. Which I've definitely missed something here. So we get the current, that's fine. We get the using, we expect an identifier. Semicolon, not skipping. So next is ID. What is the current one down here? Price. And down here is a right brace. And down here is a semicolon. Oh, okay. It works. Cool. So if, for all of our tokens, we loop over them. If we encounter a using, we expect an identifier, we skip over that one, we set it on the query object and expect a semicolon, that is correct. And then for a select statement, we expect a left brace, we then loop over all of the tokens until we encounter a right brace. We then expect a right brace to exist because that loop is broken, and then we expect a semicolon. And that seems to be working. So we've got our using, we've got our select down here. Now, while we're here, we might as well start work on the compiler. So compiler. So our compiler object is going to take in that query and it will have a compile method and it will return. Although actually we don't even need a dedicated compiler class, do we? Because the RQL method is going to act as that. Yeah. Okay. So the parser should also be responsible for sort of checking that the query is correct. Hey Kevin, how is it going? How's the weather in Florida? assuming you're still in Florida and you haven't moved back to the Philippines, I think you were in before. Let's move the validation step into the query object. So we'll have a function called validate, which never returns. It will just throw if something isn't correct. So every query should have a using statement. So we can say if this using is null, throw a new exception, missing missing using statement. Hey Alex, how's it going? If count this selects is 0, throw new exception, no selects added. And then down here we can do validate. Raining here in Florida most days, but not too bad. I was in Thailand for 4 years and the Philippines before that for about the same year. I knew you were somewhere in that direction. Yeah, rain sucks though. I mean, I'm used to it. I live in the UK, so it rains most of the year. Well, thanks. Curious what's going on. Going in here. I'll watch along. No need to catch me up. The stream will be available for playback. You might be able to rewind it now, to be fair. Basic idea, I'm writing a query language because I don't like writing export classes like this, and I want to be able to do something like this. So I'm basically writing a custom language, a domain-specific language, to turn a class that looks like this into a single function call that looks like this. Obviously, it's like hyper simplified. There's no like formatting or anything like that. Right now, it's just very bare bones. So join along in the fun. So our RQL class is going to need to store some kind of information about bindings. And this is just going to be an array of class strings where the class is an eloquent model, I think. Yeah. And that eloquent model will be added. We'll do this the really nasty way for now. We'll do class string binding alias is null. It'll be like this: bindings class equals alias, otherwise class base name class, and return this. So let's quickly create a really dummy order class. That is literally it. We can add our bindings. So add binding order class, and that should end up in here. So let's just dd this bindings. We have order, sweet. Curious, thanks. I'll catch up later and follow along live for now. Cool, yeah. Thank you for coming along. Bernard, quick question. When you're doing an interview with a candidate, what kind of things are you expecting / looking to hear from a candidate, I guess? Kind of just your general employment history and like skills. So I want to know, what have you built? If you've got examples, great. You should have a good technical understanding of the stack that you're working with. So if you're working as a Laravel developer, you should have a good understanding of the request lifecycle and the service container and IOC principles and dependency injection, eloquent and performance improvements that you can make to an app. Things like solid and dry principles are handy, although I'm not one to enforce solid and dry all the time. Controversy alert, hot take, but just your general interview things. Build some projects, show them if you get the chance. That will probably work in your favor, especially if you can kind of show off things that you'll be using in the job. And experience with other languages is pretty cool as well, in my opinion. If you've worked with other tools and you've experimented, it kind of shows that you're eager to learn and you're not just not just applying for the job, if you get what I mean. I'm always interested when somebody's eager to learn something new and they're doing that in their spare time. I find that impressive because I'm that sort of person. I'm always playing around with new things. Not to say you have to, but it's pretty cool to bring into an interview if you do. Where was I? Right, we validated the query, that's fine. So we know the query has a using statement, so we'll try to do model equals this model equals this bindings query using set using get using technically returns a nullable string, but oh well. And that can default to null. If not model, throw new exception, unrecognized binding, query get using. So let's just DD this. Call to a member function connection on null. Yes, this is not going to work here because the framework hasn't been booted up. So there is no query connections or anything. In which case, let's move to a test. So we can do this. We can import all classes, RQL. We can move this into here. And indent this by 1. Let's just focus here and run C test. So that gives us a query object, which is nice. So now let's compile these select statements. So our query was a bad name for that class, wasn't it? Query. Let's do builder. It's going to equal query for each of our query selects, we should add a method for this as well. Return this selects. So for each of those selects as a select builder. No, we don't even need to do that. We will do builder equals model query. That will be an instance of the eloquent builder. We can say select query get selects, and if that's an empty array, it will fail anyway, and we just return the builder. So in our example test, let's do query equals this, dd query to SQL, or query dd. Select ID price from orders. Nice. That is a dead simple, I don't know, domain specific language, query language on top of Eloquent. I'll probably stream for 10 more minutes, so let's have a think. How about we add support for perfect indeed. Perfect indeed. How can we expand on this really quickly? Let's think. So we've got a using statement, we've got a select. How about we take let's add a public function to array string query. Let's return this compile query all or get to array all. That will do. So that will be change that to array dd results. Yep, results. I like that. This is going to fail instantly because I haven't got a database set up for that that model. So what we'll do is, again, like a super dirty way of creating a database. So you can just use the booted hook on the model to make a database. And I do this in tests all the time because it's all contained. So we have an ID and we have a double for the price. No, let's go with float. And that is fine. Unsigned is fine as well. And then we will just, for each range, 0 to, or 1 to 100, as that, we will call order create, price, rand, 1, 1 and 100, plus random MC rand returns an int. I want a random float. Hang on, surely echo rand 0 1 echo rand. Wait, how do you get random float? MC rand returns an int, so I want to get a random number between 0 and 1. What am I looking at here? Is there no function to get a random float? Okay. MC rand? Echo MT rand. Echo MT rand divided MT. Yeah, that will do. How have I never noticed that before? I think prices should always be saved. Yeah, I completely agree with you. Prices should always be stored in cents and not as floats. For simplicity's sake, I will be using floats. Because one, there's no way of like transforming this value into a formatted value. Like right now, it's just going to output the raw value in the array. Two, yeah, it's just simpler for now. But I completely agree. Store it as an integer, divide by 100 for formatting. So that should work now. Add price to fillable. Yep. So protected, guarded equals an empty array. Table orders has no column named, updated at table timestamps. To array is returning all. We want to return to array. And there we go. We get an array with all of our values like that. That is pretty cool. Pretty cool. Yeah, I like that. Not bad. Basic parsing and compiling logic. That is pretty nifty. Okay, so while I'm here, let's so Mysql has formatting functions. Yes. They are not very nice. So I wonder if I wonder if yeah, so like something like this is kind of nasty. What I would want is something like select ID price and then some sort of like arrow function to say we'll actually do this plus a format with 2 decimal places. or maybe currency, like that. That's pretty cool. It's almost like functional, like price is going to be piped into this function. But we could do that at the SQL level instead of the... Yeah, we could do that at the SQL level instead of the PHP level. I like that idea. Let's quickly add support for those tokens. So we have an arrow. We have, strings. Let's not do strings. Yes, let's do strings, actually. We have an arrow. We have a left parentheses. We have a right parentheses. We have a number. We have a string. I think that's everything there. So then in our Lexa, let's just DD out all of the tokens quickly. Yeah. So a string will be an entire token. So a simple token would be like one of these. Can use chainin, sorry. Yeah, you could use chainin perhaps. Not sure how that would work at the SQL level. You'd need to do something like currency or maybe like format to, or places, put it to 2 decimal places and then concat that with a pound symbol, something like that. I don't know, I think I'll just leave it as a simple sort of function for now, because this will essentially become concat pound format price 2, like that. But this is much nicer to look at. Yeah. So if it's that, it's a left paren. If it's one of those, it's a token type right paren. If what else did we have there? Arrow, left paren, right paren, num. So we'll have in the Lexa, if it's a simple character, that is fine. Else if C type or is numeric character. So this is how we'll pass the numbers. The buffer will be the character. While true, we can actually just copy this entire block. If not is set. If it's not numeric, that's fine. But instead of appending that, we will do token type number. We'll replace the underscores in the numbers with nothing, and we will cast it to we also need to support floats here. Let me support floats. We'll just do ints for now. Support floats. We'll do the JavaScript thing and just have a single number type for ints and floats because we can. Let's just DD buffer, run our tests, and it should drop into there. 2. That is correct. And we can test this. Do something like this. I did not do that correctly. So that should be, yeah. 200,000. Nice. So that's numbers. Else if character is that, and characters I+1 is that, then this tokens equals new token arrow, one of those, and we need to increment I one more so that we skip past that, and is set characters I+1. So if we dd this tokens, no, so we never actually reach that point. Why is that? Characters. So we should get in there. Yep, there we go. There's our arrow and the literal. Nice. So our parser's not going to know what to do with this right now. Strings, we need to do strings as well. Else if character is one of those, what way around does that go? Like that. We'll create a buffer just as an empty string. If is set characters I+1 and characters I+1 is another one of those, then we will enter an infinite loop, break out of that infinite loop, and this will be token type string with our buffer. So we should land in there. Yep. I++. Next equals characters I+1. Just optimize this a little bit. Default to null. Next and next. Otherwise, if in array next. So if we have any sort of white space character, then we will no, do we even need to do this? We can just do buffer dot equals next, right? Yeah, we get our string there, that's fine. I believe that's everything for the tokenizer. That is stuck in an infinite loop, isn't it? If is set next, so let's just dump out next and see why that gets stuck. If not is set next, or next is an empty string. There we go, we land in here properly. Undefined array key 13, because it is trying to handle selects, which it doesn't know how to right now. So if next type is not equal to an identifier, throw a new exception, expected identifier. Make this support complex expressions like function calls / formatting or / modifiers. So this will probably throw an exception. Yep, expected identifier. Where is that? There. Got next literal. So what is it failing on? It fails on the arrow. That's what we expect. I think we'll call it there. So feature, tokenize some more tokens. One of them. So what do we get working? Well, I should really split these out into their own test cases. So we managed to build a simple Lexer, parser and compiler that will turn a custom sort of query language like this into an eloquent query, or compile it into an eloquent query and return an array of results like this. Pretty cool, not gonna lie. I'm liking this idea though. I'm liking it. I'll see how far I can take it, and whether there are actually any tangible benefits over using SQL. I think there will be. One thing that I'm definitely thinking of at the minute is some sort of having block, right? Or has, because having is a keyword in SQL. So this would act like a where has query. So you could essentially say has products greater than 3, and this would do in terms of eloquent, that would compile to something like order query has posts greater than 3. Or you could take it a step further and do has products where type equals t-shirt greater than 3, and then that would compile down to a where has posts with a callback query, and this would be query where type is t-shirt greater than 3. Make sense? So has products type equals t-shirt greater than 3 would compile into order query warehouse posts and then the callback function. So you'd basically be using that model as the base, applying compiling this sort of subquery and applying it to this query object, plus any additional constraints. Like if you just got rid of that, it would be the same as that, which defaults to greater than or equal to 1. Yeah. No, I really like this idea. Yeah. So I'll call it a day there. I might do some work on this off stream. Maybe I'll save it for streams in the week. But anyway, thank you all for coming along. Let's quickly just nuke this. Force push. The repo is public. I'll quickly pin that in the chat. I'll put it in the description as well. I'll do that now quickly. Repository. If you want to take a look, maybe play around. If you've got some ideas, think this might be useful for yourself, open up an issue, and we'll see where we take it. But yeah, thank you all for coming. Cheers Kevin, cheers Bernard, Ollie, Alex, everyone else who came along. I will catch you next time. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.